We are back as Friday the 13th gives way to Saturday the 14th in the City of Lights in Paris. A horrible situation involving multiple coordinated terror attacks there in France. And at this time, there is no better time to have our next guest as we go to Newsmax, Washington, and welcome in General Michael Hayden, the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency. General Hayden, now principal of the Chartoff Group. And Mike, on a night like this, based on your training, what should we be thinking about right now? What is your checklist, your inventory on a night like this?
Well, you know, when I started seeing the reports and it began to build over the last hour, I could not help but think of a similar night almost 7 years ago to the day when we saw a similar attack in Mumbai, India. And we went to school on that attack. It really upset us because here was an attack of great damage, great harm, great carnage, great strategic significance that was conducted by a small number of people, about a dozen, armed with nothing more than automatic weapons and cell phones. And we had great fear that we would see copycat versions of that attack. And now I fear our fears have been realized. And we're seeing that carried out tonight in Paris. It shows the fragility of free societies. It shows the great danger that international terrorism presents to all of us. And I understand the president talked about this being an attack against all humanity and against common human values. And I think he's absolutely right. Now, John and JD and Miranda, now what are the questions? How do you parse it out? I mean, there are some things that intuitively seem about right. This is probably a jihadist attack. It's certainly a terrorist attack. If you ask me on a forced choice test to pick a group, I'd say ISIS. But we don't know any of that for sure yet. And so we're going to have to wait and see the evidence as it comes in so that we can form a rational response to a very irrational act.
Well, General Hayden, you mentioned that terror attack in Mumbai, India. It targeted a hotel very popular with Western tourists. And when you look at the areas where this attack is playing out, a soccer stadium, a theater, a bar, obviously there's some symbolism to these targets that they were picked. Is that what you think?
I think so, and obviously they were soft targets. They were targets where masses of people were located, and there were targets where they could create mass casualties with a minimum amount of effort and, frankly, a minimum amount of participants. It looks as if this had been carefully planned. It looks as if these were synchronized attacks. It looks as if this had been in the making for some while.
General, I want to ask you, we're hearing reports that there's been as many as 7 separate attacks. Do you anticipate any more?
Certainly, if I'm working for DGSE and DST and the French services, you act, Miranda, as if there were attacks coming, that more were inevitable, so that you can prevent future activities. But I don't know that we will see any more. It seems as if these were carefully coordinated, orchestrated to take place with near simultaneity. But again, you've got to be on your guard for all possible options going forward.
Mike, you mentioned President Obama and made reference to his statement. We have now a portion of what the president had to say just moments ago. Let's take a listen.
Once again, we've seen an outrageous attempt to terrorize innocent civilians. This is an attack not just on Paris, it's an attack not just on the people of France, but this is an attack on all of humanity and the universal values that we share. We stand prepared and ready to provide whatever assistance that the government and the people of France need to respond.
And we hear the president talking about the offer of American assistance. Obviously, with your impressive resume, Mike Hayden, you've been in the chair coordinating our intelligence agencies. Right now, what is the relationship? Do you expect there's an offer going straight out from Langley to our French allies to assist in this? What would you be doing were you in the chair right now as Director of Central Intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have very healthy relationships with DGSE and DST, the French equivalents of CIA and NSA. The cooperation is constant. These guys are good at what they do, and they're good friends. So the first thing you have your station chief do is to offer any and all assistance that they might require. Just make a request. We will, excuse me, we will respond. The other thing is you've got things in the pipeline, particularly with regard to signals intelligence. At this point, you're probably putting things together to offer to the French. This is the anomalous, the unusual, the suspicious activity we have seen going in and out of France over the past 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 hours or more. And at moments like this, JD, you don't have the Europeans complaining about the prowess of the National Security Agency. Right. They're really happy to get whatever assistance we might have to offer.
Well, General Hayden, I just read a report that French President Francois Hollande has decided to close the borders around France. If you're the President of Spain or if you're Angela Merkel, what are those neighboring countries doing in case this is a multinational, transnational threat that's been coordinated this Friday evening and Saturday morning?
Yeah, and you know, we can't completely separate ourselves from the threat envelope here. There may be copycat attacks inspired by this attack, even if they weren't pre-planned or pre-coordinated. I think the French president is doing what he's doing for several reasons. One is it's probably a good idea in itself with regard to security. And you know, he's got a very nervous population now. He needs to be seen as taking effective action, using all of the options available to him to frankly give the French confidence again in their security services. So if I'm in Spain, if I'm in France, I understand this. I'm telling my citizens they're going to be inconvenienced, but we are standing by our French allies. These borders will be closed until the French tell us they're not closed.
General, I'm just curious, what are you hearing from your inner circle right now?
This has happened so quickly that I've heard very little. The occasional email mentioning our relationship with DGSE and our responsibility to do the right things by them.
Mike, you went through your personal checklist a little while ago, and I asked you if you were in the chair at DCI what you would be doing, but I'm just curious. We really need to drill down on this. If you were making your list of priorities with all this information coming in, what should Central Intelligence and the NSA be doing at this very moment?
Yeah, and in this case, it's probably more NSA than CIA. HUMINT is the crown jewel of intelligence collection, JD, but SIGINT is the force that you can move most quickly. All right, so clearly you checked, you see if you've had anything in the pipeline that you want to share in a human intelligence way with your French counterparts. But it's the SIGINT system that you can slew quickly to begin to see, well, actually, JD, what you're looking for now are signs of celebratory gunfire, so to speak, in the ISIS network, to see if there's some self-congratulatory communications going on so that you can offer the French some sense of confirmation as to who did this and whether or not there are other attacks that might be imminent. SIGINT is the most agile of all disciplines. That's the one I'd probably turn to right now.
Well, General Hayden, you mentioned that we can't completely remove ourselves from the threat envelope. I assume you meant the United States. And so you believe
Yes.
that we are on high alert right now in this country for possibly a copycat attack or maybe something that was coordinated as part of this?
If I'm part of a team meeting in the Western right now in the Situation Room, I am putting our security services, not necessarily our citizenry, but our security services on higher alert. And frankly, and this is beyond security theater, and frankly, you'd want to see an increased security presence around the country just to discourage anyone who might seem to think they want to be encouraged by the attacks we're seeing, inspired by the attacks we're seeing in Paris.
General Michael Hayden, given your expertise and the fact that you're in the chair right now at Newsmax Washington, we would ask you to stay with us. We're going to have to step aside for a break, but let's recap what we know on what is still Friday the 13th here in the United States, but in the very early morning hours, a little past midnight now, in Paris. It appears that there have been coordinated, nearly simultaneous terror attacks in the City of Lights, one occurring close to the soccer stadium, the soccer match involving France versus Germany. That came on the heels, interestingly enough, of a bomb threat that was phoned into the hotel where the German team was staying earlier today. Then, sadly, within a concert hall, apparently a gunman shooting and saying, according to French radio, quote, "This is for Syria." Again, this is a developing story. We will be back with more right after this.